Do you want to skip the really annoying mandatory walkaround in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024? Do you want to skip the really annoying ready to fly button? Well, now you can. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, but I'm back, and today I'm in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Now, if you've not yet played with MSFS 2024, you'll notice it's quite a bit different than the 2020 simulator that we're all used to. So the user interface has changed fairly drastically, and quite a lot of the ways in which you set up flights has changed significantly, with things like the built-in electronic flight bag created by Working Title. And they've also added a couple of other features which I find just a little bit annoying. And to demonstrate that, I'm just going to go into parking at Southend with the Cessna 172 Skyhawk. Click start the flight, and immediately you can see one big difference. You don't get a loading screen the way that you would do in 2020. Instead, you will gradually zoom into the scenery, and the scenery is actually being loaded underneath me as we go. So this is the actual sim model that we're in already. In fact, the world is modeled in the sim as the same entity as the flight world itself, which is different from 2020, where the world map was on top of the game. And for the first flight, it takes a couple of minutes to set up. It's downloading a lot of things from the internet at this point, probably including checking for updates to the 172's model, which will be streamed from the internet. Again, streaming being the big difference in the way that this sim now works. And it's dumped us on the ground at Southend, outside of our aircraft. And you can see, here is the first problem. The first problem is that you are dumped outside your aircraft in your avatar, and you're expected to do a walk around. Now, I'm going to make it daylight just to make it a bit easier to see what we're doing. There we go. But yeah, we are here outside the aircraft, and the expectation is that we will walk around the aircraft and inspect all of the elements of it, all the things that you would do in a real world walk around. And also, while we're doing that, we'll remove all of the covers. So I can look down here, and I can click on the left landing gear strut, and it's telling me that the condition is as new. And then the expectation is that you will do that for things like the tires here. So again, I can click on, I need to get a little bit closer, I think. I can click on the tire, and it's going to tell me that the condition is as new. I can click on the chocks, and that will remove the chocks. And you're also supposed to do things like, if I can get myself in the right position, that is. Yeah, you need to test the control surfaces, so I can click the hold and lock it, and then I can move the mouse up and down and do that. And the expectation is that you will do that every time you start a flight cold and dark. Now, you can probably see why I would find that annoying as a home cockpit builder, because in order to do what I'm doing, I'm having to use the keyboard and the mouse. And indeed, if I were in my simpit at the moment, I'm not, I'm on my development machine, that would involve me potentially having to either use the keyboard that I don't want to use, or configure the joystick so that I could do all of this with a joystick, none of which is a particularly satisfactory option for me as a home cockpit builder. Now, I can see how for some people this would increase their feeling of realism, because this is something you have to do in a real aircraft before you take it out, and adding that to your virtual experience helps to make it that little bit more realistic for you. But I already have lots of realism created by the fact that I have a custom home cockpit setup that I can sit in, and that is more than enough realism for me. But I can remove the rest of these covers. Got to get near enough so that they turn blue like that. I can remove the engine cover, and then I can remove the static port cover, and I can remove the pitot cover. And it's worth noting that if you don't remove those covers, your aircraft is not going to work properly. So If I don't remove the engine covers and I start the engine, it will immediately cut out. If I don't remove the chocks, I won't be able to taxi. If I don't remove the pitot cover, then I will not get any indicated airspeed, and so on and so forth. Now, to get into the aircraft from this state, you would press Shift-C, that's the standard key combination. And if you do that, you'll end up in the cockpit and everything is fine. If I hadn't removed those covers, I could then choose to do Control-E to start the engine up. And you can see it's turning on the avionics and doing everything else it needs to do. And that would actually remove the covers. So if you're comfortable doing that and you don't want to go through a manual startup procedure, then you can literally just, when you get to the walk around, press Shift-C, Control-E, and you're done. But then if you're going to do that, you might as well be starting on the runway, if we're being perfectly honest. So that isn't really a satisfactory solution, I don't think. Okay, so that's the problem. What is the solution? Let me leave this flight. And then we can go and have a look at Spad.neXt, which is where I have sorted this problem out. And I'll show you what I did, how I did it, and how you can do that as well. Okay, so now I've got the sim windowed and I've got Spad.neXt up so you can see it. And I've also got down here, and I should be able to make my camera go down here. Let me try that. There you go. I have this joystick which I've plugged in to my desktop machine temporarily, just so I can use this to trigger things in Spad. I don't normally have any game controllers on this machine. This machine is used for developing add-ons, etc., and so I only plug things in when I need them. But I've got that one now. All right, so let's go back in to parking 41 at Southend. This is my standard testing airport. I don't know why. Just picked it because I quite like it. I'm going to roll the time back though, so it is daylight. And before we start the flight, what I'm going to do in Spad is I'm going to go down to this tab, marked Extra, and I'm going to go to the Event Monitor, and I'm going to start the Event Monitor. And that will show us all of the SimConnect events and other events that are happening whilst things are operating. And now I'm going to start the flight, and we'll keep an eye on the Spad window and see what events are being generated as the flight starts. Okay, so you see there's a whole bunch of them already, and it's setting the initial state of the aircraft up. And now we're on the ground, and now we are at the walk-around. Now, what I'm going to do is just remove a couple of events that I don't want to track. And actually, we can clear all of this. Now, in the data monitor window, I'm going to say update LVARs. So it's going to read all of the LVARs and the BVARs for the sim at the moment, and that means that instead of seeing lots of weird numbers, we're going to see actual human-readable names for things. And then let's just do some walk-around tasks. So start by inspecting the left strut. And you can see in Spad we've got 2 B events have been fired. B events are user interface or HTML events. And they're slightly different from SimConnect events, but you can still trigger them from Spad.neXt if you need to do so. So unknown landing main strut L is the event that was fired, and unsurprisingly this is the left strut, left main strut, so left main strut. Why is it called unknown? Unknown is a prefix for aircraft that don't have their own special variables. Unfortunately, most aircraft do have their own special variables, so you are not going to be able to use BVARs as a universal solution, and that was the first thing that I noticed. I did try skipping the walk around using the BVARs, and you can if you file them all off, but then you need to know all of them for all the aircraft that you are flying, and there are a lot of them. So, but I can also down here remove the chocks, and you'll notice when I remove the chocks, something additional happens. So we've got the unknown chocks B events, rather like the landing main strut L ones that we have, but we've also got this SimConnect event that fired, and it says cover_set, and it has 5 parameters, but they're all currently 0. Well, that was my first clue that there is a SimConnect process we can use here that would be more universal. So let me just position myself in the right place, get a bit nearer. Now we've got access to both of these covers. So let me remove the static port cover. And again, if you look on the right at Spad.neXt, you can see the unknown cover static port events fired, but also SimConnect fired cover set, but this time with a 3 as the initial parameter. So that clued me in that this is probably an index for the covers. If I remove the pitot cover, you'll see the same event, but this time with a 2. And then if I get near enough to take off the engine covers, again, you'll see the same event firing, but with a 1. So yeah, the first number is an index for the cover. And it turns out there are actually 7 cover slots in MSFS 2024, which are standardized. So let me just momentarily go into the settings, and then we'll turn on the developer mode, which we can do here. Save them back. So if I look at the, I think it's the debug aircraft covers and chocks window. Don't know where that's gone. There we go. But these are all of the standard cover types that you have in 2024. And I can do put on all from the developer tools here, and you can see all the chocks appear, and I can do remove all and they all disappear. So these are the 7 categories. You've got chocks, engines, pitot covers, static port covers, rotor covers, landing gear covers, and propeller covers. Now, of course, not all aircraft have all of those, and unfortunately some aircraft have others other than those, which are not implemented as standard SimConnect covers, but are implemented using BVARs. So a completely universal script is, I'm afraid, still out of our reach, but we should be able to do a lot with just these 7 cover types. So let me close that window if I can. There we go. And I'm going to end the flight again. Go back to the main menu, and then we'll clear the event monitor and stop it. So we know that the event that we care about here is cover underscore set. So the first thing to try would be to bind cover set to a button. And I've got a pick 11. I'm going to add an event when the button is pressed. I'm going to send the simulation event, and I'm going to send cover set. Now we know that the first value is an index, so 0 is the chocks, and then the cover state, 1 is on, 0 is off. So this should remove the chocks. So let's go back in and see if we can make that happen. Again, just run the time back because it is dark in the UK at the moment. Say OK on there. Just save the profile. This is on button 11, so I'm going to physically touch button 11. And let's just move the view down so we can see the chocks. So if it works, these should disappear when I click the button. I'm clicking the button now. And nothing happened. So that was a disappointment. Initially, what I discovered is that the cover set event wasn't even supported by Spad, because until very recently, Spad did not have the new events and values that were brought in with 2024. Now, it has been updated with all of those, including cover set, which is why you can see it, and I was able to assign it. But at the moment, it doesn't work, and that seems to be down to a bug in the current build. So I'm promised that will be fixed, and at that point, we should be able to use the cover set event to do what we want to do. But I told you I've already found a way around it, so as it turned out, there was another way to do it. And this I discovered on the official MSFS forum, so I'm not going to claim credit for this discovery. Somebody else had found this. But there is, in fact, a SimConnect value that you can use to change this. So let's go back to the monitor view. We're going to go to the data monitor this time. So we're going to monitor a sim var, going to add data, and I'm going to look for something called cover on. Now you can see there are actually multiple covers on here. This is what's called an indexed value. So cover on is the basic value, and then you can add an index number to indicate which of the covers you're examining the state for. Now, if you do this in Spad yourself, chances are you won't see these additional covers. Instead, you'll just get cover on. And if that's the case, you would right click on it, say create index variable, do 1, and then again for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 0 through 6 is all you need. 7 is not needed because there are no aircraft that have more than 7 covers, and that's all that's allowed for at the moment. Now, of course, that might change in the future, but for right now, that is all you would need. So let's track all the values for cover on 0 through 6, and you can see that some of them are 1 and some of them are 0. Well, the 172 only has 4 covers. So it has the chocks, it has the engine covers, it has the pitot covers, and the static port covers. And that's why all of these are 1. Now, we know that the index value of the chocks is 0. So if I set this one to 0, the chocks will disappear. And if I set it back to 1, the chocks will reappear. And similarly, if I do it for cover on 1, then that's going to remove the engine cover. And if we move our cursor up, we should be able to see that that's happened. There you go, engine covers are off. And if I remove 2, which is the pitot cover, then again you can see that the pitot cover is gone, and the static port cover is 3, and again that will remove it. So for this aircraft, and indeed for all aircraft, for the SimConnect covers, all we need to do is to basically change the value of cover on for each of these index values to 0, and that will remove all of the covers. So we can just map that to a button and see if that works. Now I'm going to, again, in the debug view, go to aircraft covers and chocks, put them all on just as a shortcut. And then in Spad, I'm going to bind, well, I say I'm going to bind, I've already bound, to button number 16. Exactly those events I'm talking about, cover on being set to 0 for covers index 0 through 6. And if I push button 16, all the covers are removed. That's your first pass at a solution. You can bind that to any button on any of your controllers. And as soon as you get dumped into the walkaround, you can press that button and remove all the covers, and then you can get into the cockpit and just get on with the business of flying. But I thought, wouldn't it be much better if we could do all of this automatically on flight start? And so I started doing some research into how I could do that with Spad, and it turns out that I can. So what I'm going to do now is load a different profile. Let's go and have a look at the event that I created. Now, in order to understand what I'm doing here, you need to know about the Spad.neXt script panel. Now, hopefully, if you're a Spad.neXt user, you already do. But if you don't, the script panel is a virtual device which doesn't have any hardware behind it, so there's no buttons to click. What you can do is set up a number of different event actions, and then those event actions can be triggered based on a condition. So if you're looking here on the first event, we're looking at 3 conditions. So we're looking for local sim is avatar to be 1. We're looking for local auto covers removed to be 0, and local sim is RTC to also be 0. Now these are all local variables within Spad.neXt. These are not sim variables. These are not things which are exposed via SimConnect. These are all things which Spad provides to you based on its own internal monitoring to tell you things about the sim state. So sim is avatar will be 1 if you're in avatar mode, but it will be 0 otherwise. Sim is RTC will be 1 if you are in the real-time cinematics mode. So that's basically when you are in a view where it's spinning you around the aircraft. So for example, at the point where you would get the ready to fly button, and you will have noticed that I don't have a ready to fly button, more about that in a minute. and you're spinning around the aircraft waiting to do something, at that point sim is RTC will be 1. So I want it to be 0, indicating that I'm not in the cinematics mode. I've clicked through the ready to fly button and I'm now in the walk around. And then this variable here is one that I created, so this just tracks whether or not I've already removed the covers, because I don't want to do that more than once. And then if all of those are true, then we're going to execute this action. This should look fairly familiar. So that's removing all of the covers. And then I'm setting my auto covers removed to 1 to tell myself that I've done it. Then I'm going to delay execution for half a second. You need that so the sim can finish doing what it needs to do. And then I'm going to press and release Shift-C, which will take me into the cockpit. And that should automate the whole process of skipping the walk around to the point where I can fly the aircraft. Now, what I also need to do is to be able to set local auto covers remove back to 0 when the flight ends, so that when I do my next flight, it will happen again, because this value does persist between flights. So for that, I needed an additional event, and that's here. So all it's saying is if the sim state is 0, then I'm going to reset that variable and also an additional variable that I've created called additional covers removed. I'll explain that in a second. Sim state, again, is a variable exposed by Spad.neXt. Now, it usually has a value of 1, but there's a point during the beginning of each flight where it briefly goes to 0 and then back to 1. So what I'm doing is capturing the moment when it goes to 0, using that as an opportunity to reset my variables so that when I get into the walk around, they're set to 0 again, and then the auto walk around skip can happen. So that event was also necessary. And then finally, a third event, which I've added recently, is to handle the additional covers which are not SimConnect covers. So a good example there would be the Cirrus SR22. Now that has a windshield cover and it has tie downs, and neither of those are standard SimConnect covers. So instead, to get rid of those, I'm having to execute B events. And you can see I've actually put them in here. So unknown cover canopy cover, set that to 1, which fires the event. Unknown cover tie down, set that to 1, which fires that event. And then set my additional covers remove local to 1 to indicate I've done that. And what I'll need to do is to basically keep adding additional BVARs to this script for all of the aircraft that I fly that have additional covers that I need to get rid of. So at the moment, the only one that I've catered for and tested for is the Cirrus SR22. But for example, the TBM 930 has a windshield cover, and some of the other aircraft that come with the sim do. And unfortunately, there is no there's no option for that other than going into the sim with the aircraft, going into coming out of the aircraft back into avatar mode, and then going around and clicking to remove the cover with the event monitor on and see which event is being fired. Because unfortunately, not every aircraft that has its canopy cover will use the unknown cover canopy cover event. They will have their own. So the TBM 930 will have its own event, and the same would apply to other aircraft. There's just no way around that. I mean, the alternative is that you don't do that at all, and then you've got to go out into avatar mode and remove those covers manually. In which case, you might as well just do the whole walk around and removal of covers manually anyway, because what are you skipping? So that's the way that I've done this. There is one event that removes all the SimConnect covers, which are triggered automatically, and then there's an additional event here which is triggered at the same time, which removes additional covers, and I'll build that up as I increase the number of aircraft that I fly. So that is how to skip the walk around using Spad.neXt. You could do pretty much all of this using another program like Axis and O's, and I have actually played about with that. I'm not an AAO user, I just have the demo version at the moment, but I have validated that it will work. And in fact, there is a script available on FlightSim.2 which will do that using Axis and O's. Whether you could make it completely automatic like this, I don't know, because I don't know whether Axis and O's has equivalents to these local sim state variables that Spad gives you. But it might well be that it does, so worth investigating if you're an Axis and O's user. If, on the other hand, you've looked at all of this and thought that looks way too complicated, and I don't have Spad, and I don't have Axis and O's, and I don't want to write Lua scripts for FSUI PC, and you just want a way to skip the walk around and somebody to give it to you kind of in a box, there is an add-on called the Walkaround Manager, which you can get from most of the sim marketplaces, but not the Microsoft marketplace, which will do exactly that. It's an external app that just runs in the background, and then when you start a flight, it picks that up and it removes the covers for you. And it seems to do the job. I have tested it. It does work. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not going to recommend it for you, but if you want to try it out, it's definitely a way that you could do this. The point being that there are multiple ways that you can skip the walk around, and you can do it quite effectively and not have to deal with all of this rubbish. And for me, at least, that was super valuable. So hopefully that is valuable to you as well. Right, so I have just one more trick up my sleeve, and that is how did I skip the ready to fly button. Now, you will remember from 2020 that there were various apps that enabled you to skip the ready to fly button. So Flow, for example, Flow Pro from Parallel 42 had an option to skip the ready to fly button. And then if you use the pop-out panel manager, you probably know it comes with an add-on called the ready to fly skipper. And that does the same thing. It removes the ready to fly button. Unfortunately, a Flow does not exist for MSFS 2024 at this point. And even if it does, there's no guarantee that Parallel 42 will be able to find a way to reliably skip the ready to fly button, because the way that the UI has been implemented in MSFS 2024 has changed significantly from the way it was in 2020 for reasons that make it actually very difficult to do this without hacking the underlying sim files, which is what I had to do. And equally, the ready to fly button skipper from PopM, that doesn't work. The author of PopM has found the same hack that I found, and he found it considerably earlier than I did. And in fact, if you get the pop-out panel manager for MSFS 2024, there is a PDF in the folder that it comes in that actually explains this whole procedure to you. So let's have a look at that PDF, because that's basically the same thing that I worked out how to do, and it's slightly easier to explain to you how it's done by walking you through that PDF. So we'll take a look at that now. So this is the PDF that ships with PopM 2024, and it does a good job of explaining why there's now a problem with skipping the ready to fly button. The short explanation is that Microsoft has changed the way it's implemented, and they've put it into a JavaScript file which is loaded right at the start of the sim and which is locked by the sim. So with MSFS 2020, you could override most of the script files that are part of the user interface by adding in an add-on into your community folder, which would then specify a layout that would replace the JS or HTML files concerned. And that is how most of the user interface mods, like the Ready to Fly skipper and the mods for gamer tags, etc., that is how they're done. Unfortunately, now Microsoft is loading most of this stuff at sim startup, and those files are locked and cannot be overridden with an add-on, or at least that's how it appears at the moment. So the PopM author managed to track down where the ready to fly button is being generated in the UI. It's fairly convoluted, but basically eventually you drill down to a particular JavaScript file that you'll find in your main sim folder. This is called base.bundle.js. And again, this PDF is showing you where you will find it and what it is you need to do with it. So it's mentioning that you need to look for a particular line of the file. You see some code. You're going to have to edit that code and change it and save it. Now that will work effectively. That will remove the ready to fly button. But obviously, every time the game updates, this file might get overridden again. So you might have to go and fix it again. Let's go and have a look at it, and then we can see it working and not working. Okay, so the sim has restarted, and we're going to go back into parking 41 at Southend. And we'll see what happens. I mean, we know what happens. We're going to see the ready to fly button. And now we are in the real-time cinematic view, and there is the ready to fly button that you know and probably don't love. And when I click ready to fly, then all the covers are removed and we go straight into the cockpit. So that's the experience you get with my Spad.next script, but without ready to fly disabled. So let's see what happens when you can disable ready to fly. So let's close the sim down, and we'll comment this line back in. Fortunately, there's no way to get this this script to be reloaded except by restarting the sim. So that's kind of tedious, but once you've done it once and you know it works, it's generally fine. So let's restart the sim and we'll watch what happens this time. Okay, so I've restarted the sim again. I'm going to go into parking 41 at Southend again. But this time I have opened up the Coherent GT debugger. Now, this is a tool that you get in the Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 SDK, so the software development kit. And if you are at all familiar with the design of the sim, you've probably heard of Coherent GT. It's a framework which is used to render the glass cockpit gauges and instruments, and it's also used to generate the whole UI of the sim. And what I've done is I've inserted a breakpoint in the JavaScript file that we looked at a few moments ago on the line that is immediately before the one where we've made our change. So when I go in and say start flight, what we'll see is it will go so far and then the breakpoint will be tripped, and then everything will wait at the breakpoint for me to show you how this works. Now what I'm expecting is that the ready to fly button will appear at the point when the breakpoint is tripped, and then it will disappear when it gets clicked. But we'll see. Okay, so the callback has been called and the breakpoint has been reached, and we can see that the callback function, which has been supplied by the sim, will let you continue on to the next step. It isn't showing the ready to fly button at this point. I kind of hoped it would, but never mind. And then basically what we can do is we can step over this statement. And again, if you're not really into programming, this won't make an awful lot of sense, but I just want to demonstrate the point. So now the ready to fly button does exist and the callback has been bound. And now, if we click on that button, then the button has already been pressed from the sim's point of view, and we've moved on to the next step. And we could actually start stepping back through all of the events to find out exactly where it's doing everything, but we don't need to. I'm just going to continue execution. You saw the button appear there momentarily and then disappear because it had already been automatically clicked, and then my Spad script kicked in and now we're in the cockpit. So that is how the ready to fly button skipping actually works. But the problem is that this JavaScript file is loaded right at the start of the sim. It's locked. You can't override it. You can't put in an add-on that will take over from it. So there is possibly a technique that could be used to hook into this after the sim is loaded and make a change. And I know that the author of PopM is looking at that at the moment. I will continue to look at that as well. And if I find a method that works, I will let you know. If you want to do this, I'm afraid you are going to have to hack some files. And the best option for that will be for you to go and download the Pop-Out Panel Manager, because it's a great piece of kit and you should be using it anyway if you're using pop-outs. And then grab the PDF that's in the root of that folder, and that will give you the step-by-step instructions that you need to do this. Which can be done in Notepad or any other text editor. It takes about 5 minutes, and once it's done, you're probably good to go for at least for a while. So, right, folks, that's your lot for today. I hope you found that useful, and that potentially you will be able to use these techniques for yourself. If you want to use my Spad.neXt script panel script, then I have actually published it as a snippet for you. So if you go into Spad and go into your script panel, and don't forget that in order to have the script panel, you've got to go into devices, settings, devices, script panel, and make sure that it's turned on. I think it might be turned off by default. But then you can go to the script panel, find yourself a spare slot, go to online snippets, and then it should take you automatically to the script panel entry. You're looking for this snippet, number 13036, auto remove covers in MSFS 2024. If you say OK there, then it's going to download my little snippet and it's going to insert it onto this button for you. So that's a quick and easy way for you to do it. I'm fairly sure it will work even without you having created the indexed data values, but if it doesn't, then you just need to create them in the way that I showed you earlier. So feel free to go for that. Otherwise, that is today's video, and as always, thank you for watching. If you liked it, then please do click the like button. That does help. If you disliked it, it would help me to know, so click the dislike button. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below. I'll try and answer all questions and comments as quickly as I can. And as always, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, that would be most welcome. But I would suggest that you click the little bell icon when you do, because the schedule here can be very erratic, as the last 6 months has proven. And I wouldn't want you to miss out on me publishing a video, or indeed sit there waiting, checking the feed every day or week to see if I've published one, because it can be quite a long time between videos. With all that said, I will say thank you again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you back on the channel very soon.